Welcome to Hindsight the Podcast, where bold stories and honest reflections meet real growth. I'm Lee Jones, your host, and every week I sit down with incredible people who turn life's turning points into powerful transformations. And if you're navigating change or chasing purpose, then you're in the right place.
Well, thanks for taking care of us. How long were you in the Marines?
Oh, I was in the Army.
Army. How long were you in the Army?
I was in the Army for 20 plus years.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes,
You must have signed up when you were like 12.
No. I signed up.
Other than the little gray down here, you look like a very young man.
I appreciate that because I tried so long to hold on to my youth, but then I just had to let it go and just, show the grays a little bit. But if you catch me in like 3 or 4 weeks, you'll see all the grays and in my eyebrows. No, but I appreciate you. Hey, before we get started, and we're already started at this point, but before we get started, I like to ask some questions.
Sure.
All right. And it's before we even get into the hindsight questions, but these are just questions that I like to ask everyone now. And this one is a fun question because I've gotten some different answers, some answers that I hadn't really considered. So I'm very interested in seeing what you have to say on this particular question. Sum up your idea of success in one word.
Yeah. I can do it in 3 words. I can't do it in 1 word.
Well, I had someone do it in like 4 words, and then they took one of the words from those 4 words and emphasized that one. So I thought that was pretty cool how they did that. But do it in 4 words.
All right, 3 words. Walking with God.
So she would have summed it up with God, right? You know what I mean?
She and I are on the same page, probably.
Absolutely. And why did you choose that word? Why did you choose God?
Well, my faith is important to me. I can't go a day without being grateful for what God's done for me and continues to do for me. And I just want to make sure that my path is the path he wants me on.
I love it. Short and succinct. And that's a great answer. I absolutely. I never considered, you think about and God above all. But in this question, I wasn't thinking like that. That is the perfect answer, actually. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
One more. Knowing what you know now, what would you tell your yes to you? Actually, I have one more after that one too. But
can we just get some easy questions here? I think probably what I would say, Lee, is don't be as anxious as you are. God's got a path for you.
Love to tie in because just even if you didn't put God in there as a youth, we're super anxious to get somewhere, right? Sometimes we definitely have a plan, sometimes we don't. We just want to be an adult. We just want to be able to make our own rules and make our own decisions, right? But you as you get older, you understand, okay, that was a fallacy. That really wasn't how things work. So I love it that you put it in to putting God into it as well.
Yeah.
And then go ahead. I'm sorry.
Nope. I'm kind of waiting for your third question now.
This is an easy one for you because you're putting in the work. Okay. So this is an easy one for you right here. What are you doing today that the future you will thank you for?
I'm doing the best of my ability to line up my future spaces of influence.
I think okay.
That probably deserves a little bit more explanation. I want to make sure I'm doing what God wants me to do with my time.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to be purposeful about that.
Okay. I like it because if you put those pieces together and you're being purposeful with what it is that you're doing for God in the future, it should and hopefully will align. All right, you ready to get to it?
I think I am now.
When you look back in hindsight, everything is 20/20. In hindsight, you make mistakes, we're learning from it. In hindsight, be yesterday and your tomorrow. In hindsight, it's so much clearer now.
Have you ever worked for a bad boss? The kind who left you second guessing your every move, took credit for your work, and created an environment of stress rather than success. Well, today we're diving into what separates a manager from a true leader. My guest Dr. Andy Neillie is a business owner, best-selling author, and award-winning speaker with over 20 years of experience helping organizations turn managers into high-performing leaders. And in this episode, hopefully, we'll get an opportunity to uncover the essential traits of great leadership, the personal side of leading well, and the impact leadership has on company culture and performance. Good morning. You see my co-host then jumped on my lap real quick. How's things going over there in Texas? You said Texas, right?
That's right, Lee. Things are going well here. A little cloudy and overcast in Austin where I live, but I think going to be in the 80s today. So weather will be nice. And we very well may have one of my dogs jump into the background while you and I are talking today. I'm working from my home office and we are big dog rescuers. So we may have one jump onto the screen as well.
I love it. I love it. Hey, so we'll go ahead and jump right into it. And we talked about bad bosses, managers, supervisors, whatever you want to call it. But can you share a defining moment when you realized the difference between a manager and a true leader?
Well, I'm not sure I can identify one defining moment. I've been thinking about this for a long time, though. Your opening question really resonated with me early on in my career. Really, even before my career, these were early jobs I had while I was working my way through college. I had a boss who had an anger management issue. I was on a construction site. He was a construction foreman, and man, if he had a hand tool in his hand and you were nearby when he lost it, you better watch out because he came out swinging. And the interesting thing, Lee, is my faith became important to me at a very early age. And I'm reading the biographies of Jesus, this archetypical servant leader, and then I'm going to work for a boss who has got anger management issues. And I'm saying this isn't the way it's supposed to be. And probably that began to ignite in me the frustration with, man, this isn't the way it's supposed to be. And then really in the ensuing 25 or 30 years, as I worked into my career, as I interacted with other leaders, as I worked on my advanced degrees and finished my dissertation, the whole relevance around what you said a minute ago, there is a difference between a manager and a high-performing leader. They're not in opposition. You can have the title of a manager and be a high-performing leader. But some of the best leaders, and you know this from your military background, some of the best leaders, while they may have had a command and control designation, you followed them because of who they were and what they did and the vision they cast. That's what made them a good leader, not their title.
Yeah. Yeah. The military, I tell you what, I tried to take lessons from all of my leaders, good and bad lessons, and tried to create my own leadership style as I moved along in the military. And you're absolutely right. There are some certain people that command, they command that respect,
Right.
that leadership respect, and you're willing to follow them. And then there are some where you basically just following them because they have the title.
Because they have the title. That's right.
Exactly. And many people, they step into these management roles, but struggle with that leadership part of it. And what's the key distinction between the two for you, from your perspective?
Well, that's what I've been looking at folks like you for a long time. And I realized Norman Schwarzkopf talked about character and competence more than 20 years ago at Desert Storm. People of rich character, people of high competence. The other things that really separate high-performing leaders from people who just have the title is their, in fact, I call it the 4 leadership necessities: conviction, strategy, high line thinking, the title of your podcast, Hindsight the Podcast, reflecting on what's happening and taking a look at the bigger picture to correct moving forward. That's in a military sense, kind of what the hindsight review is about. That's that whole conviction piece. And then the competence area that Schwarzkopf and others have talked about. If you're a good leader, you're helping your people execute better and better. Your job is to make them better at their job. So conviction, competence, and then the character piece that you and I both know is so important. You'll never be a better leader than you are a person. Fair-minded, honest, other-oriented, the character traits that Jim Collins talked about in his book, Good to Great. The final element that I put together as I was working with technology and finance leaders, as I was traveling around the globe doing workshops and conferences, it took me a while to identify what I was seeing, but I finally figured it out a number of years ago. And the fourth of these 4 leadership necessities, I call leadership covenant. Covenant's kind of an old-fashioned word, although Guy Ritchie did a pretty good military movie, a typical brutal Guy Ritchie movie
Covenant,
3 or 4 years
yeah.
ago that really epitomized covenant. Because here's what I saw the best bosses doing. They had formal obligations. Hey, we had a project, we had deadlines, we had sales quotas, we had a launch that we needed to make happen. There were some formal, pretty tight criteria, the formal side of leading well, and then also the personal side. And you find out that Lee had a team member whose parent was struggling with cancer, and they needed another 3 weeks of PTO. It went beyond the HR policy, but somehow Lee made it happen because it was the right thing to do. And that balance of, hey, we've got formal criteria that I've got to hold the team accountable to, while my people know I've got their back. When I realized that's what it is, that finally gave me a language around what I was seeing high performing leaders do. So conviction, competence, character, and this idea of covenant. My people have both a formal and a personal relationship with me. Sorry, talking at you so long, but you can tell pretty excited. I think that's what separates a manager from a high performing leader. You get these 4 right, you're on your way.
No, keep talking. I love it. I love it. Because I agree with you, especially on the after action. We call it after action review now. When I was in the military. So, but for me now personally, it's just reflecting, right? So when I have a miscommunication, I would call it, with a coworker or a customer or a stakeholder, then I would go back, because obviously when I'm communicating, say I'm communicating with you, I believe I'm communicating effectively. But if the communication is not effective, then I take it on me to take a look in the mirror and see how I can make that a better communication in the future.
Good for you.
Yeah. And I guess that's something that probably I learned in the Army, because when I went in, I was young and, selfish, and really thinking about myself. To a point I still do, because I can only truly think about myself, but I include others, if we really dig down into it. But I love those four I guess principles, or what did you call them? 4
Yeah, I call
principles?
them the 4 leadership necessities. My
Necessities.
branding guy a couple years ago said, Andy, you've used that language enough. We need to trademark that language. So
Yeah, yeah,
nobody
yeah.
else is allowed to talk about the 4 leadership necessities but me, and now you and me.
Now I saw that I think you made a sheet on that, didn't you? You have some a brochure on that talks
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, on my
Yeah, along with
website.
some other great things on his website. So check it out. We'll definitely say what it is, either anytime during the podcast, but absolutely at the end.
Great.
Um,
Great.
but what are some of the common mistakes that managers make to prevent them from becoming high performing leaders?
Yeah.
I kind of alluded to one just a second ago by saying thinking about yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, go ahead. What you
Well,
got?
and I think that probably is at the core of everything, as you identified. The stewardship perspective versus the selfishness perspective. Truth of the matter is, I've worked a lot with sales teams over the years, Lee, and a lot of times when a salesperson, a top performing salesperson, transition into a sales management position, there's a chance they might make less money because they're stepping away from their own bonuses that they earned, and now they're dependent upon the team. It takes a big man, it takes a big woman to say, hey, I'm going to put the needs of the team forward. Now, ultimately, at the end of the day, at the end of the quarter, at the end of the year, we believe that you get your team performing as well as they can and you will benefit. But recognizing it can't be about me. Uh, the best leaders, they're at the bottom of the pyramid, not at the top of the pyramid. And this, you keep asking these right questions. This kind of gets me up on my soapbox, because in the 2020s, Lee, there is a very clear misunderstanding. Celebrity influence doesn't make you a leader. Just because you've got 10,000 followers on TikTok, that doesn't make you a leader. And we just completely confuse that in the era that you and I live in. People think that's what they need to do is to get their 10,000 YouTube downloads or whatever it is. That's not leadership. That's just selfish self-aggrandization. Maybe that's even a word.
I know. I was trying to think of one too.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Um,
Yeah.
for me, I think the biggest challenge that I have is to really convey that my expectation and my goals are to continue to get better. So when I come and for an example, when I would come to an employee and I would kind of critique or talk about something that has happened, it is always with the intent to, one, let you know this is what happened,
Yeah.
and then to follow up with, what are we going to do next time?
Good for you. Yep.
You know what I mean? Because I don't want people to feel that they can't tell me that they've made a mistake, because it's a mistake. Now, if it's an intentional, then don't tell me, right? Because then that's a totally
I'll
different
have a hard
conversation.
conversation at that point.
Exactly. But how can leaders gain that trust? Because a lot of people are fearful
Yeah. Well, I
of
think you said
reprisals
something
and
very
stuff.
insightful. It
Mhm.
almost just flew by if your listeners weren't listening. When you sided up to that person, you talked about what happened, and then you said, "How can we make sure this doesn't happen again?" Good leaders share credit and they own responsibility. Now that royal we doesn't mean that, Andy, you don't need to change. But Andy, I'm on your side of the table as we're talking about this. I'm not standing above you, lording it over you. Even if I'm in a position of superiority to you, my goal is to get on your side of the table and have us figure out together how you cannot have this happen. That's the key. Is I will own with you as much as I can your change. And Lee, you and I both, at the end of the day, 3 strikes you're out. Intentional willful disobedience, somebody
Yeah.
that can't learn or scale, how many opportunities do we give them? That's always a judgment call. But your approach was exactly the right one. What do we need to do to set you up for success? That's the way a leader operates.
Yeah. Yeah. You studied leadership, from what you said, extensively. Was all of your degrees in like leadership, some sort of form of leadership, all the
Well,
way up to your doctorate?
yeah, that's always been my passion, and
Okay.
particularly when you get to the master's or the doctorate level, you're allowed to focus your energies where they need to be. So I'm
Okay.
trained as a minister. My master's is a master's of divinity. My doctorate is a doctor of ministry. I
Okay.
technically I look like a seminary professor or the pastor of perhaps a large church, but my focus has always been in marketplace leadership. So that was where I did my dissertation studies. That's where I focused my energy. I have taught at the seminary level. I've taught at the graduate school level, but I'm a businessman. My wife and I own some local businesses here in Central Texas that I've grown from nothing to 5 million in the last 15 years. I've got 5 million frequent flyer miles from concurrently traveling around the world doing workshops and conferences for others. So my passion always has been around leadership, and I'm not even sure I could say I've been strategic about it, but God has opened some doors to allow me to work with other leaders and learn from them.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna ask you a question. Don't be offended. It's not an offensive question, actually. How long has God been in your life? Has it been since, from your parents, and it's just stayed with you? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing is I don't come from a Christian home, so it's not from my parents, but
Okay.
Jesus decided to find me at a scouting camp when I was 7 or 8 years old, and my best friend took me along for a week up in the backwoods of northern Michigan, and the Lord met me there. And
Mm,
and while I have not been very strategic in my life, He has always purposed to put me in a position where I had people of faith around me that were speaking into me. So
yeah.
my journey has been a journey of faith, as I said, mainly in the marketplace, but still alongside people that challenged me to grow.
And how was that experience? How was that? You weren't a pro. I hate using these words, but I was having another conversation before. You weren't you didn't have religion in your home,
Right.
and then you went into the backwoods. So what made that connection? Because usually it's something. I know the Lord can talk to us at any time. Like, can you explain that? Like, how did He come into your life?
Yeah.
If
Yeah. I mean, it was one of those typical, Saturday night sermons at the fire that they probably had
Mm.
every week at that camp, that God reached out and touched my heart. And then Lee, you're asking some very perceptive questions. I came home to a home that wasn't anti anything, but we didn't go to church. We didn't celebrate Christian holidays. But interestingly enough, God was so gracious. I moved several times. My folks moved several times while I was growing up. Every time they moved, the neighborhood we moved into was within a couple of blocks of a conservative church. And the first kids that I met at the new school I went to that church, and they grabbed me and took me along with them. And so it really was, I really just kind of followed the lead of the Lord in some respects. And along the way, that passion about what I was reading about and experiencing in my devotional and prayer life, and what I was seeing out in the jobs that I had and the people I was interacting with, a lot of times they didn't line up. And I wasn't a leader. I wasn't a spokesperson. I was really just more a student of what I saw. And along the way, um, people started saying, "Boy, Andy, you're a gifted communicator. You have a way with words. You should talk about this stuff more." And so I headed off to seminary. Probably when I headed off, again, not full of direction, but I thought I was probably going to be a Bible college professor or something like that. God had different plans for me, but the combination of my passion around good leadership and the communication gifts He's given me started coming together in my. And so today I do a lot of writing. I do a lot of podcasting. I do a lot of keynote speeches and workshops, and so I get to put together my communication gifts along with my passion around what makes a good leader a good leader.
I love it. I love it. I appreciate you for indulging me there. Hey, now you've said before that there's a shortage of good leaders today. And what do you think is causing this leadership gap?
Well, I suspect if you and I were to go back 50 years and have this very same podcast, although podcast didn't exist, we would be saying there's a shortage of leadership. And I suspect if we went back 500 years, we'd be saying there's a
Same
shortage of
thing.
leadership. I think there is always a shortage of leadership, and I will take it back to the nature of man. We all, by our very nature, tend to be selfish, and so we make it about us unless we have that bigger picture, unless there's a higher vision, this hindsight reflection that you and I've talked about. And so I think it's always natural for us to think about ourselves. We have to have a degree of maturity to get out of our own way and think about others. So I suspect there'll always be a need for guys like you and me to remind people, hey, it's not about you. It's about the people you influence.
Wow, that is an amazing answer. That is an amazing answer because we always have leaders. Do we have great leaders? Sometimes, depending, you like the ones who have the vision, right? I love that. Great answer.
Well, and in the era that we live in, like John Maxwell, the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. I think the American Management Association said he is the world's leading. He's written more about leadership in his lifetime than anybody ever has, and he's got 50 books on leadership, and there's 500 other books, and every year there's another 5,000 that are published. It's not that there's a lack of understanding around leadership. The problem is we're all selfish, and
Yeah, bottom line. Yeah,
and getting that maturity where I don't make it about me is, that's a hard challenge, right?
it is. It is. It is. Yeah, it is. It is. Okay. My mind is going a whole lot of different ways, but I'm gonna stay on track. So how does one of the things I just remember a leader specifically stands out. He was portrayed in Black Hawk Down, Captain Steele. He was my colonel when I was over at Fort Drum, and I remember we went on like a 5-mile run, and then they led us to this open field, and they had a square marked off and some boxing gloves on either side. He said line up on behind the boxing gloves, and then we all lined up behind the boxing gloves, and his speech was, "Look, I don't care if you are 150 pounds and the guy in front of you is 350. Life ain't fair. Suck it up. Fight." You know what I'm saying? We were getting out context. We were getting ready to be deployed on a peacekeeping mission to go to war-torn Bosnia at the time.
Wow.
So he was getting our mentality right. And then he boxes. Well, he was a big dude too, but he boxed, blood all over his face. I mean, I was in an infantry unit, so it was a crazy thing, right? But you find these leaders like that, and it's like, oh man, let's go. Like you're ready. You're ready to go. And he personalizes, so he wants you to get your mind right. Like you're not going down to 7-Eleven or Walmart. You're going to a different country. You need to learn this. We're going to act professionally. We're going to do what we got to do, but things may get hairy. And I need your mind to be right to be able to handle that.
You
So
know, I thanks again for taking care of us and protecting us, serving us so well. I don't have
yeah,
any story like that, but early on, I was a high school football coach. I was an assistant coach. And my head coach, brand new head coach at this school, we were an inner city school. We were not a very good team. Lot of mental. We played in our own games. We had one really good athlete. In fact, he went
yeah,
on to the Air Force Academy. But in this certain day, Frank Geske, our head coach, he was unhappy with how hard our team wasn't working. And he threw his clipboard down and he said, "Scott, I just want you to come at me the way you're really supposed to come at me." Scott's got his pads on. He's fully equipped. Coach Geske is just standing there in his polo shirt and his shorts. And, you know, Scott kind of looked around and coach is swearing at him to come at him. So Scott tackled coach. Coach bounced back up and said, "Now that was wimpy. I want you to hit me like you need to hit me." And about the third or fourth time, he is sending the coach flying. And the
yeah,
rest of us coaches, we don't even know how to respond. Geske got back up, grabbed his clipboard, swore at the kids a little bit more, not sure about his language, and said, "That's the way it's supposed to be done," and got him back in the huddle. You would
yeah.
never know. He'd just been hit by a big old linebacker who was going to Air Force Academy. An hour and a half later, we get in the coach's room. Coach Geske takes his polo shirt off. You can already see the welts just breaking out. He is going to be
Yeah.
black and blue for days. But you didn't know it in that moment. He did what he needed to do to communicate his leadership message. And that was decades ago. And here I am telling you that story again. I haven't forgotten it because it made that same kind of impact. That leader knew that it needed to be about the team. It wasn't about him. He had a point that he needed to make. Oof. Stuck
Yeah,
with me.
it sticks. And when that leader puts themselves in harm's way to make that point, that really overemphasizes the point. Like you have no excuse after that
That's right.
to not get in there and give it your all. Great, great story. Great
So the end of that
story.
story is when I first started coaching there, the team I coached was 1-7, and we were the team everybody else wanted to play for their homecoming because you wanted to beat Franklin. My final year coaching there under Geske, we were 7-2, and we made the state playoffs. Same kids, same high dropout rate, same wrong side of the tracks, but we had a coach who was also a leader.
Yeah. Great story. Man, what a turnaround.
Yeah.
What a turnaround. How long were you a coach? I love coaches.
I coached
Coaches.
about 6 or 7 years. I coached while I was in graduate school, and then I coached
Yeah.
out at the high school level for another 3 or 4 years before then I got into sales and sales management. So you find a lot of good salespeople and sales managers started out. You know, if you can control a classroom, you can convince a client to move forward with you.
I know. Coaching, oh man, great coaches or good coaches, I guess same as leaders, right? They give so many amazing life lessons.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you'd apply. That's why anyway, we could talk about, hey,
yeah,
have your
yeah,
kids play sports because you get so many good life lessons.
yeah.
But in today's evolving workplace, how can leaders drive performance while still showing empathy? Now, I love how I think your coach showed it. He was like, get your blah, 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 blah. Hit me.
Yeah.
Now that's how you're supposed to do it. Like he brought it back. So it's just aggression and then it's like team. This is how we do it. So how can leaders drive performance while still showing empathy to their teams?
Yeah. I mean, that's the $1 million question. If we all could figure that out in a post-COVID, much more inclusive world than we've ever lived in, that ability for a good leader to get on the side of the table that their people are on, I think is more challenging now than perhaps it's ever been. Now, you know, we just have this little moment in time. In the 1500s, was leadership difficult? Undoubtedly it was. In the 1800s, was it? I just know you and I face real challenges because at times we just need to have our eyes open. I think that the older I get, the more I realize I don't know as much as I thought I knew. Help me understand. And whether they're generational differences or perspective differences or lifestyle differences, your and my ability to not compromise our leadership conviction, that first C of, hey, here's where the team needs to go if we're going to accomplish the mission that we need to accomplish, not compromising that leadership conviction with that balance of leadership covenant where I'm going to drive you and I'm also going to understand you.
Yeah.
That's why I think, management is easy because it's focused on things. Leadership will always be challenging because it's focused on people. And Lee, you and I both, we could talk for the next 5 hours about things we didn't do correctly, or in hindsight, we would have done differently. Or it's, if you think you've arrived as a high performing leader, that's about the time you need to wake up and realize I'm not who I thought I was.
Yeah, I like it. Hey, so you spoke a little bit about this, but what are from your perspective? I guess I broached the conversation or the conundrum earlier, but what are some actionable ways that managers can start earning that trust in a challenging or remote work environment?
Yeah. One, I think, is recognize that you need to be the one who communicates and sees the big picture. Managers are in today, emerging leaders, they think bigger, they think broader, they think further. They're not just looking at their portion of the plant anymore. They're looking at the entire plant floor and seeing how their portion contributes to the output. They're thinking about the competitive landscape. They're thinking about the impact of tariffs. We've all got tariffs on the front of our minds right now because of the political arena we live in. They're thinking about the pluses and minuses. They're thinking 18 months out. They're getting their eyes up. I think if there's one defining characteristics that separates a worker from somebody who can become a high performing leader, it's their ability to see that bigger picture. I call it conviction because it's a nice acronym, CCCC. Really, we're talking about strategy. We're talking about big picture. We're talking about seeing the broader perspective. That really is the high aim vision that y'all talk about in the military. Get your eyes up to see the bigger picture.
Yeah. I like it. Hey, so I'm in a process right now. I don't know where I'm at, but I'm in the process of writing a book.
For you.
And the book is about getting to know you, right? So it asks a few questions, a question a day, ask you, and then I tell you a little bit about myself and how I approach those questions or how I have approached those questions. So my question to you is, what role does self-awareness play in leadership, and how can leaders cultivate it?
Yeah. That whole idea of being able to hold up the mirror, I think, is critically important for a leader. But here's the balance, and it brings me back to our discussion 15 minutes ago about celebrity influencers and leadership are two different things. Mirrors are only for glancing, Lee. You and I need to look in the mirror just long enough to make sure our shirt's buttoned and our hair is manicured or our head is shaved. That we are presentable because if we spend too much time looking in the mirrors, we suffer from what I call the leadership narcissism syndrome, where we really do make it all about how good do we look. Mirrors are only for glancing. We've got to look at them, but the reason we look at them is so that we can then turn to the outside world and bring our best.
Yeah. I like that. You made me think of Alaska. I give it funny. My first duty station was Alaska. Okay, so I was not planning on this. This was not my plan, but it ended up being a pretty good duty station. They had mirrors right at the door before you go outside. And the reason why I'm laughing about this story is because I always hate it. You ever take a cold shower and it hit the water hits your back and it's like, that's how it felt walking out of the door in Alaska. But what made me think about that moment was the mirror. And the mirror is so that you can check yourself before you go out and present yourself to the world, right? And then the other thing we did, we always had partners as well, your battle buddy. And your battle buddy checks you as well before you present yourself to the world. So, yeah.
Great.
And,
great life lessons there, not just Alaska weather lessons, but life lessons. Right?
Absolutely. And I love what you said about, taking a glimpse in the mirror. not focusing in on it, right? Because it's a moment just to check yourself.
Yeah.
You know, damn, did I communicate that correctly?
Yeah.
Did he get that? What can I do to be better at it? Okay, got it. Time to move on. You know,
Yeah.
so
And
that's
don't
it.
give me too much credit. If you send some people to my website, if they go back a blog from about a year ago, I was getting my hair cut by my hair cutter, and she's surrounded by mirrors all day long, and she's done it for her whole career. And just as we're having our conversation offhanded, she said, Andy, for beauticians, mirrors are just for glancing. We shouldn't spend the whole day looking at us. The goal is to have you yourself. And I stole that from Michelle, and I have shared that quote with leaders like you all over the world at this point. Mirrors are just for glancing.
I like it. It's a great life lesson, though. I like it.
Yeah.
I never really paid attention to it, and I think I should do that because the concept of hindsight is to look in the past, right? But it's not to live in the past. It's just to glance at it, make sure that you're on pace, right?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. All right. Yeah. I told you in the beginning I was in the military, and so for many military veterans, including myself, transition into leadership roles in the civilian workforce. What advice would you give to veterans moving from structured military leadership to corporate leadership styles?
Well, I mean, the military has taught all of us a great deal about leadership, West Point leadership, and a whole bunch of the other books and podcasts we've listened to. But the thing that I would say to your fellow colleagues that are exiting the military is command and control. Probably quit working in the military a generation ago as well. Command and control doesn't work in the marketplace anymore. People work in environment rich in options. And so if you come down too hard on them, they'll just not show up tomorrow because there's 13 other companies vying for their performance. So command and control doesn't work in the 2020s in the marketplace. People have to decide to work for you. Stephen Covey said it more than 25 years ago. People join organizations for their job. They leave because of their boss. And so you can't expect them to do it because you said so. That doesn't work anymore.
That's great. I tell you what, my mind, this is a great conversation because my mind is going so many. Yeah, it's going so. Exactly. All right, let me keep it going. Let's talk about your book, The Golden Principles.
Yeah.
So it draws
somewhere.
Yeah, I saw the cover. It's pretty nice cover too. I haven't got a chance to read it. I just looked at it. But it draws on leadership lessons from a rescued golden retriever.
Yeah.
What's one of your favorite lessons from the book that leaders can apply right now today?
Well, it came from me coming home late at night from one of these training engagements or keynotes or something, walking in the house, dropping my suitcase at midnight or 1 a.m., yelling out, "I'm home," and expecting everybody to come running to the master of the family who earned a living to keep the creditors at bay and should be worshipped with adoration. And Redford, the dog that's on the cover of my book, would go running the opposite direction. My approach was, you come to me. And what I had to learn was, with this wounded-hearted, abused and neglected golden retriever, I had to learn to get down to his level. In fact, you've seen this. We've all seen this. If you have pets, cats or dogs, you see them do what veterinarians call a play bow, where they put their paws out in front of them and they stretch and lean down. They've got their hindquarters up and their tail is wagging. And what that is communicating to the other animal or to whoever they're playing with is, hey, I'm approachable. I want to be friends. I'm friendly. At least 6 foot, 225-pound Andy would walk in the door and then get down on his hands and knees and do a play bow at midnight, because I realized what I need to do to meet this animal where he's at is I've got to meet him at his level. Well, you and I both know that's not just a dog lesson. That's a leadership lesson.
Yes.
How do you get to the level of your team members, of your employees? And the book's really, it's like a chicken soup for the soul for leaders. 10 lessons that Redford and our other dogs taught us over the years. The best yes is always better than a harsh no. It's going to take time for trust to be built. Sometimes the best leaders are peers and not leaders. Just all these common sense things that I was learning from our dogs that I realized, man, the good leaders I work with, they may not be articulating this as a golden principle, but they're doing the same thing my wife and I are doing as we're trying to get our dogs who all come from broken situations to love us, trust us, and obey us.
Yeah. Yeah. Great stories. I never thought when I saw that book, and I started thinking, because I'm with my dog all the time, and really when I first got him, it was really for my daughter. The dog's for my daughter, so I really didn't have much to do with him, and I left him alone. But his personality is that he likes to, like people, he likes to do this when he wants to do that, or he likes to hang around you when he wants to hang around you. So I wasn't really bothering him. And so I guess that kind of conveyed something to him. So anyway, bottom line is, here he is laying up here beside me. He's like always around because I don't mess with him. I let him be him, and he lets me be me.
Yeah.
So that's good. How many books have you written?
Well, I've written 3 books, but really the only one that anybody other than my wife and daughter and a couple of friends have read is The Golden Principles. It became an Amazon bestseller shortly after I put it out. My publisher said, Andy, let's make this available for 99 cents, and we're going to buy some lists of dog lovers and animal rescue groups and vet associations. And so my wife reminds me regularly, Andy, all this best-selling thing, you got one royalty check for $4.16, and Andy, I think we've spent thousands of dollars getting copies of your book so that you can hand them out for free. So being a New York Times or a Wall Street Journal best-selling author means something. Being an Amazon.com best-selling author just means I get to say I'm a best-selling author. So
no, well, don't short sell it, because that's a great. I mean, there's so I don't know about Texas, but there's so many dog lovers here in California.
Yeah,
and to be able to read something like that, they're interested in leadership. They're interested definitely in their dogs, and to be able to put those put that story and that message together.
I mean, the neat thing, Lee, is I have several companies where they request 7 or 10 copies periodically because they've got a new group of managers, and part of their onboarding is, hey, we're going to go through Dr. Andy's book together as a new management team. So I appreciate that. I think the language around leadership that these dogs have given me, as you said, people resonate with it. These are simple principles, but they work.
Yeah. All right, so I asked you a few questions. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you think is, well, not that you think, anything that you want to talk about that I haven't brought up yet?
Well, so we've talked about, manager versus high performing leader. In hindsight, I think one of the things that will tell you if you are becoming a high performing leader is, are you holding the hard conversations? Managers get the easy conversations, leaders get the hard conversations. And so to that respect, Lee, I've got a little ebook, an 8-page ebook that I make available at leadershipmaterials.com called The 3 Imperative Leadership Conversations: how to hold a hard conversation, how to hold a coaching conversation, and how to hold a 3-fold affirmation conversation. And this little ebook has got definitions and insights and worksheets in it to help people. I would say one of the clear examples, if you want to say, how am I doing at this, Dr. Andy? How am I doing at this, Lee? If you are holding hard conversations, you're stepping up into your leadership position.
I like it. Okay. Y'all heard it. Go ahead and download it. It's there. I had a colonel who used to tell me, I'm giving you the answers to the test. Andy is giving you the answers to the test.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Take advantage. It's
One thing I will say to you, Lee, you and I, who both feel like we've got a call on our lives to influence other people. My marketing guy said, Andy, there are no good website names left. We got to figure out a way for people to get this book easily. And I poked around for a while, and I found that website, leadershipmaterials.com. I thought, what a great, nobody owns that one. I'm going to buy that one and put this book up there. So it's easy to find it. And really, I think it's been helpful for a number of people, how to hold that hard conversation, how to hold a developmental coaching conversation. And again, definitions, insights, and a worksheet. And then the last thing, Lee, is, you and I, in our role as leaders, no matter what our title is, we hold the ancillary title of CEO, Chief Encouragement Officer. Our job is to always find the silver lining even as we're having to talk about the dark clouds. And so that how to hold a threefold affirmation conversation is part of that. I've got about 175 people that work for me. I've got 7 managers that report directly to me. A couple of years ago, they gave me the Sunshine Award at our annual meetings because they said, Andy is always finding something positive in the situation. Well, I'm
Nice.
not Pollyanna-ish, but I know that life beats everybody up. And part of my job as a leader is to thank them for their good job, find the good things that have happened in the midst of bad challenges they're facing. Chief Encouragement Officer is always a title that you and I have if we're leading teams.
That's important. That's really important because, you said life is hard. People who really care about what it is that they do, they already feel bad that they made a mistake.
Yeah.
I used to feel like that, back when I was a kid. Like, I already know I messed up. I don't want to really talk about, I got it. I feel like crap. So when a boss comes in, you have to teach, coach, and mentor. You have to do that. But you got to have that empathy, right? You got to, like you said, get down and get to that level. Be like, hey, you're doing a great job, but we need to talk about this area right here.
Yeah, exactly.
And connect. So I don't know. Anyway, like I said, my whole thing is for my teams, I like to let them know that I got them. And I always said, I got you.
Yeah.
And it don't mean you can go out there and do whatever you want. Like you got to do your thing, but I got you. Like if you make a mistake, I got you.
Yeah.
If you do great, I got you. Like I'm going to be consistent in that space, because it's all about us getting better. So anyway, that's my thing.
No.
You got any last words? I don't want to say the last words.
No. I mean, you and I resonate on that, right? While these 4 leadership necessities, it's a simple model that I've kind of identified as I've watched emerging leaders. What simple doesn't mean easy. Your folks need to continue to listen to you regularly. They need to absorb my reading. We all need to be getting better and better because the world sucks it out of us. And so we have got to continually work at becoming high-performing leaders. I'm convinced growing in these 4 leadership necessities will let you know you're doing that, but it's an escalator that never ends.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to try this real quick because you said it 3 times. Is the website Leadership Materials?
That's where they can get the book, leadershipmaterials.com. Obviously, they can go to my website, Neillie Leadership, and there's other resources there, as you alluded to. There's some good resources there. And if somebody wants to just grab 15 minutes of my time, there's a link on the top of the webpage to jump on for a phone call as well. So number of ways to access me.
All right, you've already answered my next question, which is where can the listeners connect with you? So go to the website, and you can connect with Andy. You can get 15-minute consult, I'm assuming, right, with you or whatever the time looks like. So
and longer if necessary,
absolutely, and take advantage of it. Take advantage of the free stuff because then you'll be ready to, if there is a sale, to buy it, right? Because it's worth it. Like I'm going to get that book, and I'm going to read it. How many pages are in that book?
I think it's about 105 pages. It's like 10 chapters. Each chapter's 10 or 12 pages long. So it's pretty easy read.
I'm an audiobook all day guy.
Good for you.
110 pages. I can read that. I can read the book. But anyway, hey, I really appreciate you coming on here and talking about leadership. And this has been an incredible conversation on the power of leadership. Dr. Andy Neillie, we explored the critical differences between managers and leaders, or effective leaders, or impactful leaders, the impact leadership has on culture, and how trust and empathy drive high performance. And Dr. Andy, thank you for sharing your insights and experiences. Can I call you Dr. Andy? Does that sound funny? Or should I say Dr. Neillie?
Dr. Andy works. Just Andy between you and me works just as well.
But thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. And for the listeners, if you found value in today's episode, be sure to subscribe to Hindsight the Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. And if you want to lead better, not just manage, check out Dr. Neillie's work for more actionable leadership strategies. And until next time, keep pushing forward, keep learning, and always keep being more. I'll talk to you next time. Hey, thanks for joining me here on Hindsight the Podcast. I'm your host, Lee Jones. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know I did. And while I have you here, why don't you take your mouse, go over and click on that subscribe button? No, not right there. Over to the right. No, down, right there. Boom. Thank you. Now, thank you for subscribing to Hindsight the Podcast. I'm your host, Lee Jones.